All right, excited to dig in today. We're going to be talking about the Follow Up Boss admin and owner level tools. So if you're an agent, you're welcome to join us, but you won't have a lot of these features necessarily. So we're really kind of focused on Follow Up Boss setup and things like that. My name is Lee Adkins. I'm the Chief Partnership Officer at Amplified Solutions, which means I do webinars like this and talk to our other partners that we work with and love collaborating with, like Follow Boss and Ylopo and all those guys. Our company provides account management services where we help you manage the day-to-day of your Follow Boss, Ylopo, ZillowFlex, other systems like that. And wanted to introduce Bridget Ahern, who is our Director of Client Success. How are you, Bridget?
Doing well today. How you doing, Lee?
I'm good. I'm excited to dig in. So, Bridget, you do a lot of this work with people. So really excited to go through this with you and kind of get your feedback on what people are doing well, what people are doing wrong, common, things that you see.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, we'll dive right in. We'll drop some links in the chat. If you want to drop us in the chat real quick where you're joining us from, it's always nice to see some familiar, friendly faces and see what kind of reach we got going. All right, Cleveland. See a bunch of familiar people on. So Orlando, Dallas, Florida, couple Florida, Columbus. Love it. Awesome. Cool. Well, Bridget, at a high level, on Follow Up Boss, I think one of the great and bad things about it is you can customize a bunch of stuff. So we watch a webinar and we customize one thing, but we don't always think about the global picture.
Right. Yeah. It's a blessing and a curse how much you actually can do with Follow Up Boss, because once you get that snowball going, starts rolling, people are like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. And it's like, but have you paid attention to what your stages actually are lately?
Right.
So,
right.
Really making sure, as it's awesome that you can do all these great things with it, but really just sticking to the core basics of simplicity so that all those other cool things that you want to do run that much smoother.
Right. And something we say a lot, and I feel compelled to say it frequently still, is, the bigger your company starts to get, the more simple actually your setup needs to be, because there's a lot of people that have to remember what stage do we use for that? How do we put them on the newsletter? How do we do all these things? Mm-hmm. And so that's something we see a lot, is that people, as they grow, they're adding all this stuff. And then they have a lot of stuff, and then no one person kind of knows what does what, or should we be doing this or anything like that. So
yeah,
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll share this guide with you guys. I always send out a link to the recording of this session as well as this guide. It takes me an hour or two to get it processed and uploaded to YouTube, but we'll get that out to you guys today. So you'll all have a copy of this. So at a high level, we're going to go through some of the basics, and we'll dig into a little more details, and then some key things to work smarter. We've also got a ton of links in this document to other resources we have for you, like a Follow Up Boss handbook, an onboarding template, some free courses that we have, all kinds of good stuff. But let's go ahead and dive right in. This is truly designed for you to potentially print this out, or otherwise just use it and go through these things one at a time. So Bridget, start with stages, because stages are the foundation.
Stages are the foundation. Stages are really your whole driving force on the process and the journey that you're trying to take those leads that are coming into the database, and making sure that you have them set in the right places so that you do the right follow-up with those people that are, in the hot stage, the warm stage, if they're nurturers, or you're obviously going to handle all of those people a lot differently. So are they simple and cohesive is the first thing that we have there. So really, less is more. Sometimes we get in these people's things and they've got every single little stage for anything that they could possibly imagine, when in reality, you can condense that down, especially since at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is get our agents to adopt to actually use Follow Up Boss. So if you have them, all the stages simple and laid out, they're going to be more inclined to actually use it than if there's a whole bunch going on in there and then they don't know where people go, so they're just not going to do it.
Right. And the thing, that we see a lot too, stages truly are their time frame or likeliness to transact. We get a lot of questions, and I just want to tackle this right up front about things like Sphere and things like that, because a lot of people envision that as a stage. However, Sphere is not a stage of transacting. We want your Sphere to be a hot prospect, and then an active client, and then a past client, and then come back and do it all over again. So Sphere is much better as a source and or a tag, because those are evergreen with the contact, versus something like a Sphere isn't a state of like their ability to transact with you. It's really more of a source, because that's how you know them. And so, Bridget, I think, it's interesting now. I feel like a lot of us, like, I know Barry's recommended Ylopo stages, our recommended stages, I think Elena's stages, like a lot of the people that do this work.
Yeah.
We've all really come to a lot of these same ones, which are lead, which you can't change and don't want to. That means new, came in, ready, set, go. Hot, active. We prefer a buyer seller tag, because an active client could be both. They could be one or the other. They could be a buyer now. They could be a seller 5 years from now. Like, just using the active client there. Some sort of nurture. Sometimes we'll use a long-term nurture additionally, if it makes sense to have like a warmer nurture and a long-term nurture. Obviously, we can use ponds for that. We're not going to get too deep into details for those. And then, of course, closed is another stage in Follow Up Boss that you can't edit. So we recommend using the built-in close stage. I know a lot of us call them past clients, but closed in Follow Up Boss is
Can't do anything about it.
kind of the way to go. Bridget, I'm sure I missed a few. I know you live in this world. What are some of the other stages that we kind of recommend in the simple?
Yeah. I want to piggyback off the close thing for a second. We do see, since you can't change it, and we do see a lot of people who prefer the past client situation. Closed can also be really good for that as soon as they close with you, so that you make sure that you get all of that initial information and stuff out to them in, the first 30 days or the first 3 months or whatever. And then you can have them go into the past client stage so that that they need a little bit less intense of a follow-up type situation.
Yeah, and that's actually how they're originally designed long ago in Follow Up Boss 1. It was designed to be enclosed for your metrics, and then you could possibly move them out of closed. I wanted to share too, we're going to share this link later, but we've got our Follow Up Boss guide, and it's got some basic key stages in it. These aren't necessarily our absolute recommended stages, but we do have some resources we'll share that have some of this. I know we're going to tackle a lot. So Smart List. Is there anything else on stages, Bridget, before we move on?
No, other than that, I think trash, that's also one that you can't delete. So that's always going to be there. And you do want to be wary of actually using trash, because you never know when one of those leads could actually come back and be a potential client, and you could convert them, unless it's solicitation, just a absolute spam. You don't have any email or phone number for that person. If they put, 555 number and Fred Flintstone as their email or something, that obviously you can't really get a hold of them, so you can trash them. But really want to be wary of actually using that stage, so that you're making sure that those people can come back and you'll know.
Yeah, almost without fail, I find we'll go into somebody's account and go into the trash, and there's like 5 recent, like, hey, can we see this on Friday? So be very mindful, have a good policy when we get to the handbook portion. Just have a good policy around like what's really trash, because we see people people overuse the trash.
I called and they didn't answer, so I put them in trash. And
right.
Like, call them again.
No. So, and then Smart Lists. I mean, Smart Lists are really kind of your built-in workflow for how you want to use Follow Up Boss. We'll go basic on. I see we've got some power users on, just in some names I recognize, but they're basically just a set of saved criteria that you want to be able to look at frequently without having to think too hard, or just tell your agents, hey, we really want you to look at, hot, new lead, and recent activity every day type of thing. There's no one size fits all. I know we have some recommended Smart Lists, Bridget, but I think almost always we talk to people about, what are you trying to do? You don't want to have 97 Smart Lists, but, keep it simple. What are some good Smart Lists you see people use?
Definitely just trying to make them be efficient for the different stages that you have set up. So Those people who are hot, you're going to want to make sure that you're talking to them a couple times a week at least, so that you can get them converted to an actual client. And then nurture people. They're not going to need as much focus. You're not going to need to be calling them as much. So, if you want to reach out to them every 30 days, just so that you stay on their radar. So once they warm up a little bit and then start getting hot, you're the person who's been reaching out to them. They're really designed. I like to design them, at least we like to be communication based, so that you can go through that list and zero out. So you give your agents this great system, this great CRM, and then they're like, okay, I have all these people in here, but now what do I do?
Right.
Go to your smart list, go work your smart list. As you talk to those people on the smart list, they're going to drop off of the smart list. And that's how you know who you need to be talking to in the CRM every day.
Right. Absolutely. And Helen had a great question that I answered in the chat, but I wanted to bring up. Part of the beauty, again, of the system is you can do whatever you want. I think we have a lot of people that actually will use deals, and either deals reporting or just deals to kind of manage active people. Because it's like, all right, well, they're under contract now. So now we've got a deal stage that's like, these are my deals. But some people prefer that in a smart list. There's no one right way. Some people have a TC team that wants a different smart list because they are managing active clients. Some people want their agents to check somebody else mentioned in the chat, their first smart list is active client, which is great. If that works for you and that's your reminder to, hey, these guys' inspections coming up. Hey, hey, we need to love on these guys. Like, that's great.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And then on tags, tags are tough because I personally don't care about having a lot of tags. I don't mind it. I know some people are like, oh, we got to clean up our tags. I'm like, the tags are the one thing that you can kind of lump up in bulk and have a bunch of. Again, like, we want our buyers to close in 2020 and then come back and be a closed seller in 2023. So using tags for things like that kind of live forever. So for example, if you're doing homestead exemption for this year, you can easily go back, click the buyer 2022 tag, have all your buyers, throw them the homestead info or do it one by one, however you do it. But tags really are made for this. They are made for Sphere, people that did this thing, people went, and did that, people that we want to invite to our ice cream party, people that got an invite to the client thing, A+ lead, like whatever they are. Yeah, and I love Rich. I'm totally with that. Rich just said, follow boss is hard as an overthinker. Like, it's so easy.
Yeah.
And we're the same way, honestly. Like, we could nerd out in the stuff all day and build like whatever you would want ever. But is that really serving a team of agents who want to just spend a couple minutes in this, do what they got to do, and then get out in the field? So, and Rich, I hope that's what we'll cover a bit today. Like, look at all these things in one shot versus like, I'm going to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Bridget, anything else on tags? I mean, they're sort of explanatory, but like,
yeah, I mean, I think mainly we kind of put it in the little side extra gray notes there, just really being mindful that you're not having multiple of the same tag. I feel like that's where you really get that buildup. That's where you really get that clutter, and you're not able to properly filter things that you need to. Something might not pop up on a smart list because you have buyer in all caps as the tag that's applied to it, but somebody did it with only the capital B, and then they're like, well, why isn't my buyer coming up on here? Because you're not using consistent tags. So just really driving home the point that search the tag before you create a new tag, so that everything stays consistent and everything's all more organized that way. But I mean, I agree. I think use as many tags as you want, just don't repeat tags.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad that triggered me to think of something else too. Using that # or hashtag, or what, depends on how old you are, I guess, what you call it. The cool thing about tags and Follow Up Boss is they are listed alphabetically. So if you want certain tags like buyer, seller, anything like that, you can consider using a character or the # to make those more visible. Because if you do have a bunch of tags, you can't always see them all in the contact record. And another tip, it's funny, I remember I mentioned this a long time ago and a bunch of people were unaware of this. If you click on the tag itself, even a client record, it'll drop you right to everyone that has that tag. It's a great shortcut to say, hey, show me all my hot buyers that did whatever.
Yep.
It's a really great way to use that. But they do list alphabetically. And so if you need some sort of naming system to keep certain ones a little more active. Now, be mindful if you use a product like Sisu or some other things, these are powered off of these tags. Same with Ylopo. You might need to have very specific tags. So be mindful before you go renaming tags that if they talk to another system, Conversion Monster, another good example, like be delicate with that. So, and yeah, we'll send the recording and this doc to everybody when we're done. So custom fields, these are a little bit of a new add. And Bridget, to your point, we'll get into this in a second. They're kind of a great way, almost like secondary set of stages if you need them to be that way to keep your stages clean. But talk to us a little bit about custom fields, Bridget.
Custom fields. I see a lot of times people are like, oh, this would be great to have, this would be great to have, this would be great to have as a custom field, but you just want to make sure that it's actually something that you're going to use and that makes sense to have, because those custom fields they'll pile up quickly. And it's not like something as simple as a tag where they're kind of in the back end, like that lives right there on the screen. You see them all right there. And if they're not making sense, then you don't necessarily need them there. But definitely having close date, that's always a huge one. Always want to make sure that people are putting that in. Birthdays, those two alone are just huge, making sure that you're putting valuable information in there that's pertaining to the contact. Recruiting, that's something kind of neat that we like to do with it. That way, instead of having, you've got your sales transaction stages, your leads, hots, warms, nurtures, cold. You could theoretically do that with recruiting, but if you have it as a drop-down custom stage as well, or custom field rather, sorry, it kind of just gives you a little bit more intel on where you really are in the process with that person recruiting. If you guys are interviewing, if you're on a second interview, background check, anything along those lines. So lots of different resources for them. And there's a bunch that you can do with them. You can have a text, you could add an actual date, you can have a drop down, you can make it numerical. Really a bunch of benefits to using custom fields, just not too many that you're not going to use.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I love to kind of piggyback on the recruiting thing. We're big fans of using custom stages for like a recruiting status. Whether you put agents in recruiting, possible agents you might recruit into a pond, or if you have one stage they're all in, if you want to put them in like realtor don't contact or realtor Raya don't run on this stage or whatever, that's fine. But then you can use custom fields to have a recruiting hot prospect, recruiting nurture, recruiting haven't contacted yet, and build your smart lists off of those as well. So you could have separate recruiting smart lists powered by those custom fields. So, and Chuck, yeah, you can trigger an action plan by date through custom field, but it has to be an automation. So the automation would say when custom field date happens or is about to happen or whatever, that automation can power an action plan or a note or a reassignment. So yes, it's definitely a thing. In fact, that's how like the birthday and closing anniversary ones are kind of set. Now, the problem is you have to be mindful that you get the right dates. To Bridget's point, if you don't update these, it's not going to be beneficial. So if you have a TC team or TC person, you could say, hey, please update the right closing date when you close the file. But yeah, 100% you can use these to trigger all kinds of cool stuff. And you can even use them to trigger a smart list. So if you want to manually send them a card or send them an AM card or do something like that, you can have them in a smart list of birthdays upcoming in the next couple of months. So, Camille, that's a great question. Custom fields, this is not possible yet. Camille's question is if certain custom fields can only be visible to certain users. That's not possible yet. They're definitely global. There is a cool feature, and as the order of them is global, there is an interesting feature though called read only. And if you check the read only box, it will only allow admins or owners to update the field, but agents can see it, but to answer your actual question, Camille, it's not yet possible to not show custom fields. Now there's a nominal weird exception that in some deal custom fields, which are slightly different, only people on the deal can see that custom field. So if it was commission related or something like that, you could put it into a deal custom field, but that's a little more advanced use case. And you might just test it too, like log in as an agent account and make sure that it can't be seen, but there is a sort of workaround. So pawns, talk to us about pawns, Bridget. Like pawns are great, but I see a lot of people try to do some funky things with them that we don't necessarily always recommend.
Yes, without a doubt. Everyone's always keeping it funky all the time, no matter in ponds or outside of ponds. Let's
keep us on our toes.
Yeah. So yeah, ponds are really just a great resource to kind of get people off of your radar, people who've been, unresponsive or stale for, we like to say about a year plus. Is if you haven't heard from somebody in a year, probably good to just kind of throw them in the pond and release them. When you release somebody into the pond, it opens them up to other agents inside of the database instead of just being assigned to one specific person. So a lot of people here are going to be admins and owner type people, but they won't be able to, they'll still be able to see everybody in the system, but once they go into a pond, then the agents get that access as well. So it gives if you guys have new agents that are on your team and they want to be able to go and try to re-prospect and try to get some life out of these people that one of your other agents maybe tried to engage, but nothing really happened. If an agent's just hungry, they have some free time, they want to go fishing for some leads in the pond, they can go and try to get some re-engagement and reassign them to themselves. So really gives an opportunity for that. Seen another cool way people use them for vendors and things like that. So that way, everybody, all the agents have access. You don't have to have multiple people for, certain lenders, certain lawyers. Want to be wary of the lawyers because if they are in the pond, everybody can see the emails that are sent back and forth. So a couple things to be mindful of. But, photographers, cleaning people, roofers, different people like that you want your agents to have access to. And that way, they can all just live in a pond right there, and they can go if one of their people cancels, their photographer cancels last minute, they can just go dip in the pond, tag them, use that tag as a photographer, and be able to find somebody short notice, hopefully.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And I want to lean into what you said too about newer agents and ponds. We have a lot of clients now who are doing that. They're like, great, we'll put you on leads. Like you've been through training, you've been through onboarding. We'll put you on leads. But start in the pond.
Yeah.
If you're newer or just learning or new to the team or just learning Follow Up Boss, like give them some, hey, we want you to call 50 people a day or 50 people a week from the pond or whatever, just to get them up and using it. The system helps them dial a little bit. Obviously, they're less good leads, loosely speaking, in the sense that if they say something really stupid, fine, like next, go to the next one.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Drew, so essentially what people used to do before ponds is try to add a bunch of collaborators to a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And it is not a great way to do it. But if they're in a pond, you control access. I'm going to try to stay out of the product a little bit just because we get really down rabbit holes when we do it. But there's always a pond lead. And that is the person that any action plans or if anything goes out, they're going to go out in the name of the pond lead. But any team members you have assigned here will be able to see those leads. And the way they do that is actually via this drop down. They'll be able to see whatever ponds they're in here. And this is how you navigate to it. But yeah, that's the essence of it. So it's an easy way for people. And like to Bridget's point, if you have a vendor pond, you can put a whole bunch of vendors in here. Everybody can see and find them because they might need to go, I need a photographer. I need a whatever. So yeah, I think Goldmine was just an idea we had. Like that would be the best pond.
Yeah, this is a dummy account. It's not.
I want to hop back to Steven's question. No, he had a great question. So Steven says he has 2 ponds. He has one that's more qualified and one that's less qualified. he wants agents in the qualified. But if they call them and they're not good, he wants to be able to move to unqualified. This is a little bit complex, but I'm going to answer it this way because I think this is the best way to do it. And Stephen, I think you're a bit of a power user. I would set an automation that if they add a tag or do something, that automation moves them to the pond. Because Stephen, I think your point is you want them access to one, but not access to the other. Mm-hmm. Because they don't have access to the other, they couldn't reassign it. But you could do an automation that if they apply like an unqualified tag, that automation could move them to the unqualified pond. I know that's kind of a sort of a complex answer, but I think that's the best way to do it. Yeah, Drew, I love it. Add agents, whoever. It's so much better than trying to do collaborators. Then you add a new team member, you forget to add them as a collaborator. So, and yes, Jordan, that's correct. Everybody listed here would have access to see this pond, and if they don't, they literally won't know it exists, generally speaking. So, yeah, perfect. All right, cool, Stephen. That's great. So let's hop back in here. Let's keep things on track. Action plans, same thing. People collect action plans. Guilty, also myself.
Yep.
And you got some running, you got some firing on automation, you got some firing on a stage change, and before you know it, you've got 7 action plans running on one person. So just again, doing this audit around like, do we need all of these things? Are they still serving us well? We find almost always we simplify people's plans and it's a lot easier. It's a lot better to have a new lead plan, a nurture plan, and we don't think these people are ever going to call us ever, but let's drip on them and see if they'll send us a referral.
Yeah.
And then Bridget, talk to us a little bit about, this actually just checking your stats on action plans because you can do this.
Yes, you can. Checking your stats, making sure the things that you have going out are working well. If not, then making some minor tweaks and adjustments to maybe see where the hiccup is on why that one's not being as successful, maybe as some other ones that you have. And then, having plans for things that you don't need, especially with it being the beginning of the year. If you guys have been using for a while, I'm sure there's been an instance where you're like, man, it'd just be so much easier if I had an action plan for that. So I just think kind of doing a reassessment and reevaluating what you have and what you have working and running currently. And then also things that possibly that you have a need for, and just being able to take a little bit of time to really think that through and get that made up, because, you never know when the simplest thing could make one of your agents who doesn't like using Follow Up Boss, if they come to you with an idea, well, it'd be nice if I was able to do this or that. Boom. Next thing you know, they could become a power user themselves because they see all the value that's actually there. So just taking a step back every so often and seeing what you're working with.
Yeah, definitely. And one other thing that we really recommend, we won't get into the details of this. In fact, I think we have I have a few webinars on it. But also something like a client newsletter. And again, it doesn't have to be a graphically beautiful, learn about me, all these crazy things. It could be a batch email and Follow Up Boss that just says, hey, here's some interesting stuff going on this weekend. Mm-hmm. But action plans are wonderful and powerful. And it's great that they can run simultaneously on a bunch of different people doing different things at different times. But we have a lot of people we work with that do weekly newsletters. And my favorite thing is to pull up their Google Analytics. And every Thursday, there's 300 people on their site all of a sudden because they send out their newsletter every week or month. So I think coupling action plans to always be going with some sort of mass thing, newsletter, touch, one-on-ones, whatever they are. That's our recommended cadence, is to let the action plans just run and do their thing, but also send some sort of bulk consistently.
Yes. And also make sure that you're still calling and texting too, because as great as action plans are right. For that mindless, thoughtless touch points on people, an action plan still isn't going to sell a house at the end of the day. An agent who's actually communicating with the lead is going to sell the house at the end of the day. So they're really great to have to make sure that people are getting touched, but you don't ever want that to take away from actual agent interaction with one of the leads.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think people are pretty good about this now, but we used to see people that had like bajillions of tasks in their action plans. Those are just better done as a smart list. We have a few people that use a lot of tasks and the agents will actually check them off, but they're also very specific. It's like send bomb video saying thank you for inquiring through Zillow or whatever. They're very specific. So another thing, if you're cleaning up some action plans to think about is maybe you don't need a ton of tasks in there. What we like to do is put a task at the end that says like action plans done, do something.
Yeah.
Put them on another plan, change their stage, put them in a pond, like whatever that thing is. But naming that task something very clear, like move to pond, and you can actually have them automatically move to a pond at the end of an action plan.
Yeah, we do that with nurture plans.
Yeah, exactly. So if you nurture them for 2 years on an action plan and they're still unresponsive, throw them into a pond. So yeah, automations, man, they're great. But again, I think people kind of collect automations or they see a webinar and they're like, oh, I need this automation. And then they're running a lot of automations that may not be totally congruent.
Yeah. I like that you keep saying people collect these things because that's truly
yeah. And I do it too. We have to go and clean up our account
everybody's guilty of it.
Yeah.
Nobody on this list is innocent of it. Yeah. But there's, really awesome use cases for automations if you get some good ones going, but kind of another one of those things. Start small with it, see what you can do, see how it works. And then from there, you can kind of build on top of it.
Yeah. And speaking of the ponds, I actually just did this week with somebody. We set up an automation on a pond that said, if somebody does something, I think it was save a property or view a property or whatever, they do something and they're in this pond, we actually just did there's a reassign option in automation. And so we actually reassigned it back out almost like it's a new lead. And I think we included a note that said like old lead active on site, like check the notes and then call them. But that's another great way to pull people out of the pond is if they take action, just reassign them like they're a newer lead. Because if they're back on your site, I don't really care if they're 3 years old or 10 years old, or if they've never answered an email or they put in a fake phone number, like they're back on your site.
Yeah. Reach out to them. That's a good one. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I hadn't even got to download with you on that one yet. We just did it yesterday morning. And then email and text templates. Bridget, I know like everybody's always looking for kind of the magical template and all that stuff, but I think a lot of times these are just the common things that we're writing anyway. Hey, just left you a voicemail. Sorry, I missed you. Hey, this is so-and-so with so-and-so. Save this number. It's my, my work cell, my follow-up boss number. But yeah, talk a little bit about what you see people doing with email and text templates, Bridget.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately just having them as a quick source to be able to fire out to people so that you don't have to, like you said, rewrite the same thing over and over and over again, especially if you're working through your smart lists and, you're sending them one-off sort of email type things. Just going through their list, all you have to do is go click, send the template, go click, send the template, and you're done with your smart list for the day. You can go out on the field, you can go do whatever you want, and you still zeroed out your list and made sure that people that you needed to talk to were being talked to without having to really think all that hard about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I use these like obsessively. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. Like you probably got an email today that was like, hey, we have a webinar today. Boom. Hey, when I send out the recording, that's an email template. I'm not sitting there for 10 minutes trying to figure out what I want to say.
Yeah.
Here's the recording. Here's the guide. Have a good day. Like it's so much easier in your workflow when you don't have to type and think. Just be careful to name them well. Because then you can just search them. You can pull them up real quick. If you have certain ones you want your agents to use, or if you have new lead ones versus nurture ones versus under contract ones, be sure to utilize the folders and also name them like contract to close plan, nurture email template. Hey, I just missed you.
Yeah.
Or hey, I just left you a voicemail, whatever they are.
Yeah.
Naming them will help with that adoption.
Yep. Nurture buyer. So, if it's a buyer, and that same rule actually goes for action plans too. You really want to make sure that you're naming those well also.
Yeah.
So people know what ones they need to be used if they're manually applying them and stuff. So it's really just kind of thoughtless for them. Oh, okay, nurture buyer, make sure go in, activate the nurture buyer one. Simple as that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. We see it, right? We work with people who aren't doing that. And then when they have it, it's like, oh my goodness, everybody's sending out this email template. It's like, right, because you trained them on it and named it, made it easy to find. It really is an easy button. It's funny. It's actually not a hotter thing. People are like, I need an automation. I need this. It's like, rock out your text templates and email templates. Drew, great question. There's not currently an out of office feature. That would be lovely. It's been discussed many times. Bridget and I often meet with the product team, and we will definitely pass that along.
Yeah.
It would be really great to have that, or even an auto forward to another agent. Like, hey, this person's covering for me while I'm out. Like, let it go to them, or something to that effect. But there currently is not. But that is definitely a good one.
But that's a good point, is if you are going out of town and have somebody else covering your stuff, to make sure to add them as a collaborator, so that at least if your out of office stuff isn't going in, somebody's seeing about an inquiry or anything along those lines to be able to have your back.
Yeah, absolutely. Good add there for sure. So, all right, we're getting close here. We're doing good on time. Appointments. Follow Boss recently added the ability, well, somewhat recently, the ability to add appointments and outcomes. And having those dialed in for what you're trying to measure really make good sense. They allow you to look at like what lead sources are getting appointments. Are those appointments turning into money or any of those things? So just be sure, even if they're basic, that you've done, buyer consultation, listing consultation. As all things, start simple. You don't need 500 types, but just having that outcome of appointment won, appointment lost, no show, whatever those things are, will really help you look back and go, oh, look, 50% of our Zillow people end up in a buyer rep with us, or all of our people from this particular source never show up for their appointments. It's just good intel that you have some power over. Bridget, have you seen any of those recently, or come up with any new ones recently, types or outcomes?
Not necessarily any new ones or anything, but I will say, like, it definitely is super awesome for reporting purposes. Just being able to see, especially for your agents, like who's actually out there, who's setting appointments, who's meeting up with these people, who's going and showing homes, or who's got inspections when. I mean, it really is great for reporting to be able to get kind of a bird's eye view on what these people are doing with their time.
Right.
And not to mention, what's also pretty awesome about it, the types and outcomes, not so much, but your appointment features, they sync with your Google Calendar or your Microsoft 360 calendar. So if you're making an appointment in Follow Up Boss, it's going to let you know when you go to your Google Calendar what you have going on that day, and vice versa. If you're making an appointment with a specific email that's attached to somebody in your Follow Up Boss, it's going to automatically go on their contact profile too.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're also in agent goals. So when you go to agent goals and see their appointments, it's a really good feature that I think, maybe sometimes isn't as sexy as some of the other features, but it can really give you good intel on that. So yeah, we'll hop into groups, and then we're close to the end, and then we'll share all the resources and links here in a second. But lead flows. I find a lot of people have either set it and forget it lead flows, or they're doing something funny, like they all go to one person and that person has to reassign them or think of like, who should I give this to? Using groups in Follow Boss are really powerful. Even if you're a smaller team or even a solo, like, people laugh at me when I do this, but I'm like, if you're the only person on the team, let's still build it with a group. Because as you add somebody, all you have to do is add them to that one group, and they can get any or all sort of leads you want them to. Mm-hmm. It's just so much better. You don't want to have to edit this lead flow ever. There's much that can go wrong. So creating a buyers group, a listing leads group, whatever those groups are. But we're a really big fan of that, because again, if those groups are in your lead flow, if the lead flow is pushing to a group, then all you have to do is come to the group and say, oh, well, I'm going to add, Caroline to our buyer's lead group, and then she's going to get any and all sources buyer leads. This is also where you would determine if you want round robin or first to claim. Of course, you can do more advanced rules, which we're not going to get into in the lead flow, but it's just so much better to set this up. So all you have to do is come here and add one new agent one time in one place, and they're good to go instead of trying to finagle stuff.
Right. And also it's nice how if somebody's out on vacation or maybe they're not doing what they need to be doing and you pause their leads for whatever reason, they still live in that group. So you don't have to take them off. And then don't have to go think about, okay, well, they're back. We need to go make sure that they're back in this group or this group or this group. You can just pause all of their leads coming in from the team screen.
Yep.
And they'll be pausing their group. And once you take them off the pause, they're going to open right back up.
Yep. So it's admin teams, and there's a pause button. You also want to check your export options. Probably don't want people to be able to export. So yeah, admin teams. But yeah, no, that's a great ad, Bridget. It's so much easier to click that one button when, if somebody's underperforming, out of office.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. So cool. We'll get through these last pieces. So obviously Follow Up Boss dialer. Bridget, preach to me about the dialer.
Preach all day about the dialer. It is so efficient and it is so nice to, I really try to spin it off for people, it really gives you the opportunity to have a work-life balance without having to carry around two phones all the time. It's all right in one phone. Everything's going to come through the Follow Up Boss app. Not to mention all the accountability and all the communication is logged directly into Follow Up Boss as long as you're using that number. If you're making a call to a contact, it's going to be logged in Follow Up Boss. It can also turn on call recording. So if you need to do training with agents or for your own personal self, if maybe you were driving and you were talking to a client at the same time and you might have missed something, you can go back and you can re-listen to that call. So you don't have to, kind of let the cat out of the bag that maybe you didn't quite catch what they said on that call. But yeah, and then you can text from it, you can call, you can use text templates from it. So yeah, I am all in on the dialer. It helps keep people accountable. Team leads and owners and admins can go in, see which agents are actually making those phone calls out to people, how long they're averaging talking to people, if they're leaving voicemails. I'm big dialer fan over here.
Yeah, it's definitely where it's at. And speaking of the recording, that's the Power Ups feature is it's funny, they keep moving stuff. I made all these videos and then it's like, well, now it's not there anymore. But under your menu, you can drop down and go to Power Ups. A couple of these things are here. Like we have blur mode on. That's a long story. YouTube doesn't like it when we share fake contact info online. But this is where you can turn on call recording across the entire account. If you're in a state where call recording is not legal, but you're a pro platform, you can come do that. I would highly advise you to check your state laws. Most of them are really weird where they say if one party knows the call's being recorded, being you, it's legal, but check your state laws. Things like batch email. If you don't want your agents to all be able to send batch email, this is where you turn that off. Things like appointment reminders. Some of these are pro only. But yeah, they're pretty great features. So again, top right menu, Power Ups. These are generally only for admins and owners. So if you're an agent, you may not have this. But even this agent-owned lead duplication is good. If you run a brokerage, you might have people that have the same sphere in the system. This would allow them to each have a contact rather than there being one record that's now assigned to the wrong person or something funny like that. But yeah, these are pretty great features. And again, blur mode, if you're shooting training videos, blur mode can be a great way to not show actual client info while you're in there doing that. And it just looks like this. It just literally blurs out the main contact info. So Power Ups, get the rules on paper. Bridget, this is like our thing. This is our mantra.
Yes, get it on paper. That and if it didn't happen in Follow Up Boss, then it didn't happen. Those are two big ones. But yes, get it on paper. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Your agent can't come to you and be like, oh, well, I didn't know I was supposed to put this certain tag on something, or I didn't know that I should put them into this stage. I I don't understand what the stages are where people are supposed to be going.
Right.
No excuses, excuse proof, having it written down, having it on paper, making sure that these people are held accountable. Because I mean, we all know agents, if there's an excuse to be made, they're going to try to probably do it.
That's right. So having it listed, yes, we're sending this handbook out as well. It's linked in the doc. Basic things like we talked about, documenting some of your automations and marketing. Like if you put them in the watch and that triggers a plan, that should be notated so agents know. Like, don't put them on a plan and then put them in watch, because watch puts them on a plan. Some best practices around deals, daily workflow stuff, some company lead policy. I mean, it's pretty simple. But that's the point. We want you to be able to just pop in your best practices. We've got some in here, but pop in your best practices. And then a couple quick resources. But again, we're going to send all this out to everybody today. So we've got another link to that template. We've got an onboarding template that's got a bunch of things like add them to your website. If you're YLOPO, here's the form to add them. We've got this, which I actually don't think I've even shown you yet, Bridget. I've had this forever and I just cleaned it up a little bit. It's a document that's like to document your daily, weekly, monthly, and follow-up loss. So it's like, hey, every day, agent, we want you to do this. Every day you do that. Every month you should check this, check your sphere, check your reporting, stuff like that. So these are all linked in this guide. Link to our YouTube channel, our webinar playlist, which is technically only one other webinar because the first one got pulled by YouTube, but that's another story.
Just why we blur mode now.
That's right. That's why we use blur mode. And then I host Follow Up Boss office hours. Here's a link to all of those, as well as the Follow Up Boss success community, our company newsletter. And of course, if you want to talk with us, you can reply back to the recording email I send out or click one of these links to learn more about what we do. But I'll send this out today to everybody, the recording, this guide, which has the links to all the other guides. But yeah, I appreciate you guys being on. Bridget, you want to take us out with some words of wisdom?
Thanks, guys. Appreciate everybody coming on. Like we said, if it didn't happen, Follow Up Boss, it didn't happen. And happy fubbing, everybody.
Indeed. All right, you guys take care. Hopefully we'll see you again soon.
See ya.